Congratulations! You are a game master or dungeon master. You're the one who has volunteered to guide your friends through a tabletop role-playing game. You've learned the rules of your system of choice, you know your players, you even know who brings the best snacks. But you feel that something is missing from your games of Dungeons & Dragons or your TTRPG of choice. How the hells do you take the lead in telling the story with them? My name's Rich, this is Renegade Rolls, and let's learn to be storytellers together with our friends. On this channel, I am devoted to helping you run games where the story is at the core of it. We still have our rules and mechanics, everything about our game systems still applies, but over the course of this video, and many others to come, I'll be showing you how I run my games. In my view, TTRPGs are unique. They're the only medium that mix improvisation and creativity with rules and guidelines and structures to keep everything focused. If you look at most of these books behind me, they devote large portions to systems and mechanics and exactly what to do in different situations for different abilities for each dice roll. I'm assuming you're familiar with at least one of them. I'll also assume that it's probably Dungeons & Dragons. As you're watching, you might think, oh, I already do a lot of this already, or you might find something new. Either way, I'm hoping to codify this approach to story-first role-playing games, and to give you a quick start guide on how you can make it happen at your table every single time. As Game Masters, we have some different challenges and responsibilities to our players. They bring snacks, we bring an entire universe of imagination. It's fair to say that Game Masters do a lot of the heavy lifting. The good news is that in these story-focused games, we are much more collaborators, co-conspirators with our players. It can't be a case of them sitting back and just waiting for the story to come to them. These games work best when everybody is fully engaged and present and focused on the table. Curiosity is the core value of what every player will bring, plus snacks. Many people have the preconception that stories need to be planned. But if we planned every detail of the story before the players even got to the table, they'd be playing through our novel. And that is not going to be satisfying for anyone. It's also not even going to be the best use of the medium and the tools we have at our disposal. We have a table full of creative people. Let's use them. Instead of planning the story as a whole, we can actually relax a bit. We don't need to look nearly so far ahead. We should be looking for opportunities to progress each stage of the plot. I found that the best way of doing this is to start with the player characters at the core, understanding who our players want their characters to be in the world, and then building on those hopes and dreams, those goals and ambitions, and definitely those fears as well. If we do this, the story becomes personal to our players. The problem I find with a lot of modules is they are necessarily generic, so any adventuring party, whatever their makeup, can be plopped into place on them. Strahd von Zarovich, the big baddie of the Curse of Strahd D&D campaign, the way he's written, he doesn't hate the party personally. He hates that they're there to destroy his kingdom, and probably kill him too. The story that we tell at the table suffers because of that. It's not personal, it's not directed, it doesn't feel tailor-made to our players. If you as Game Masters can make the stories personal, then our tales can sing. When you're running a story-first game, it's the player characters who are at the heart of the game. The story isn't the tale of the big bad evil person. The antagonists should be designed to challenge the player characters' goals, and especially those flaws. If we build our worlds from the player characters outwards, first, we save a whole load of world building. We don't have to think about what's happening on that continent over there, because the players probably aren't going to visit it anytime soon. Second, it will be clear to the players that this tale is told just for them. Story-focused games work best when you can trust each other around the table. That means the players trusting you as GM that all is not lost if things go badly in combat, that if they fail to do something that the story will prematurely end. If they can trust you that you've got something up your sleeve for any situation, then they'll be more willing to lean into this narrative approach. They'll make decisions for their characters that might not be optimal, because they know that the story will be more fun. I wouldn't expect a level 1 character to be suddenly rushing up and taking on a dragon single-handedly. That's not a good story, that's just very silly. But I'd hope that the vibes that you've created around the table allow them to make some more interesting choices. If you're playing one-shots or convention games with strangers, it's still possible to have this story-first approach, but it shines when we're looking at longer form play. That 100 session, that epic campaign that we dream about, is going to be so much better if it has story at its heart. When I speak about not having a plan, I don't mean we should go into the game blind. We can have loads of ideas and possibilities about what's going to happen next. In fact, it'll be pretty likely that next session the group will go to a particular location, and we can plan our next game accordingly. What we should try and avoid is planning the arcs, the big swoops of the story. If you've already decided how you'd like the story to end, if you're thinking, well, we'll have this confrontation at the volcano, the big baddie is going to drop the jewel into the pit and darkness will reign across the world, well, that is a really good plan for your antagonist to have, and you should be writing that down. This can form what they'll do if the pesky heroic heroes don't intervene. But as Game Master, we need to be comfortable with the fact that plans change. No plan survives contact with a group of players. So our NPCs, our big bad evil folks, they can have plans, but we as Game Masters, we shouldn't. We can dream how the story might end, but as soon as we actively decide how it should end, then we get into trouble. One tool for this I would highly recommend is to think about the approach of the lazy dungeon master, Mike Shea, when he talks about secrets and clues. It was a fundamental change for me when I realised that the story didn't have to go to any one particular place, that the players didn't need to find that one clue in the secret room at the back of the dungeon in order for the plot to progress. The trick with this, and I'd highly recommend buying the book, by the way, because it's full of amazing advice, but this particular trick says that we should separate the secrets and clues from the locations or the people or the situations of which they might be gated behind. If we say the players don't find the secret room in the back of the Dread Temple, well, that's okay. Maybe later on the character just gets the information they need through a dream or a vision. In one game I was running where I was completely stuck for options. The clue literally landed on the party's head. If the party never find that secret room, well, it's okay. You've got something in your bank for next time. Move it to your next dungeon and nobody will be any the wiser. One of the fundamentals to think about with stories is that stories are change. It's the change of the world from beginning to end, and it can also be the change within the characters. I find that with story-focused games, how the characters change and progress and learn more about themselves is just as interesting, and if not more so, than the external goings-on. To make change happen, we should be looking to create conflict in the world. Not necessarily combat. Conflict just means anywhere where there are opposed forces in some way. More often than not, our protagonists, player characters, will embody one of those forces, and we have some antagonists, the enemies who are trying to thwart them. In most TTRPGs, conflict tends to mean combat. An adventuring party fighting the skeletons in a dungeon, that's kind of traditional at this point, and it can often have the least story built in. But we can still encourage it. We can do this by giving characters tough choices, even within this situation. Do they push their way past the skeletons to steal a jewel, or do they stand back? Do they defend their brother? By giving that option as GM, we are creating this environment for the characters to change and to grow, for us to learn more about them. Conflicts are also where the gap between what the player characters want to achieve and the obstacles standing in between them, that's where this is the most obvious. The party want to fight their way through the dungeon, the evil skeletons are stopping them. When trying to design these scenes with conflict and potentially combat in mind, keeping the player characters' stories at their heart is going to be the strongest way of doing this. A simple random encounter would be, there are D4 wolves, they appear as you're walking through the highlands. That doesn't really give us much story. It'd be tricky for the players, however enthusiastic they are, to add their own personality to that. So let's make it slightly more interesting. Here come D4 wolves with torn red collars around their necks. Okay, that's interesting. I wonder if the players then might start asking some questions like, ooh, is that the colour of the cult in the village that we passed? Is that blood on there? It'll help them become curious in the world around them. My favourite version of this, they're D4 wolves with torn red collars, and they go for the party, they attack them, apart from one particular player. This is still the same encounter mechanically, it have the same challenge rating in Dungeons & Dragons, but it gives so much space for our players to latch onto, to ask questions of each other. Also for our characters to ask questions of themselves and go, well, why are the wolves attacking me but not them? Do they not like me? Why are they acting like this? This will evoke so much more curiosity in our world. One of our core jobs as Game Master is to set the pace of the story that we're telling. While we shouldn't be planning that overall structure, we can choose which of the player characters' goals to bring to the forefront. Often we might imagine stories as a large arc sweeping from start to finish, with a beginning, a middle, and an end. What great stories have are actually lots of small arcs weaving in and out of each other, and then some larger arcs on top. In any given episode, each of the characters will be at different points within their story. One character might be having their worst day ever, while another is recovering from something. One character might be on top of the world and sees their friend really struggling. Allowing these arcs to interact, giving players opportunity to speak with each other, will make the story happen organically. If you keep track of these arcs and thinking about them, think about where the story could go next, then you can build scenarios, building conflicts which allow this to take place. Most importantly, as game masters, we need to accept that there is a lot which will be out of our control. We've got to be comfortable with improvising, like crazy. We need to be okay with the fact that if we've set something up over on the left and the characters go to the right, that's okay. That's absolutely fine. I'll often say to groups at the start of a campaign that there will be story in whichever direction they choose. If you choose to engage with one thing and not the other, then the story can grow around that. Having said that, I still really enjoy making the players aware of that path not taken. If they've chosen not to engage with a big plot hook and the scheme of a big baddie, then, well, that baddie might just succeed in their goals, and the players will only find out about it after the fact when the world has changed around them. Matt Mercer and Brennan Lee Mulligan are fantastic GMs. If you watch any episode of Critical Role or Dimension 20, you'll see that they've built incredible worlds. They are masters of this universe and know all sorts about them. But more importantly, they are super laser-focused attentive on their player characters and the stories that the players are trying to tell. This allows a great, big, rich, built-out world that feels real, but where the characters' stories are at the heart of it. These epic tales are possible for you as well, and I'd love to help you find them for yourself. If you'd like to join a community, a whole load of like-minded folks, I've got a Discord server where we chat, we play games, we share wisdom, advice with each other, and quite a lot of memes. This has been a short but hopefully sweet introduction into how we can run story-focused TTRPGs. There is so much more to talk about here, and each of the sections I mentioned in the video, there's a rabbit hole of stuff that we can go explore. So I hope you'll join me, where we can be storytellers together with our friends.